If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have another amazing show lineup for y'all today. We have a true honor talking about Susan Hensley. She has an amazing book that, hey, art journaling is something that we all should be doing, but she's going to explain the story behind that. It's an amazing story. She is an author, a transformational coach, and also a speaker. She also, prior to all this, she's an experienced HR executive who turned to art journaling during the challenging time of the pandemic. We all remember that. Not too long ago. It's wild times, to say the least, but we are here today to share the story. So first and foremost, I want to welcome our guest, Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's Monday, kicking the week, and happy to be here with you and share your story. First and foremost, kind of tell us a little bit about your professional background, and then lead us into what happened in the pandemic.
Sure. So, I've been around long enough to have had a couple different careers, right? And started as a journalist, and then when I had my family, when we started family, I switched into sort of corporate America, and I was working in HR, and all the things. You're working, you're raising a family, you've got all the stuff that happens in modern life, and it's going well, right? You say to your friends, "Oh, I'm crazy busy," and different things come and go. But a couple of years before the pandemic, it stopped fitting as well. And I couldn't quite know what it was. It was like, I feel like I need a change. I was getting ready to, children were sort of leaving for college. And I went, a friend of mine, a coworker, had a whole side hustle as really producing art, like making art to sell. And I never viewed myself at all as artistic or even creative, right? I was the sort of person like, you needed something done, I'd get it done for you, right? I loved the lists and all those things. But one day she was talking to a few of us, and she invited us over to her house on a Saturday to learn a little bit about art. It's like, okay. So I go, and it's like a rainy Saturday, and I'm playing with some paints in the corner. I think she's trying to teach us how to draw face proportions or color wheel. And I'm over there, and I'm having the best time. And I'm making like a little mess, if you will, on my paper. I'm not really waiting for the paints to dry. And so what happens when you do that? You end up like with a brown, murky mess, right? It's not good. But I loved it. And in all of my, if you will, executive coaching and career coaching, the one thing you always tell people when they're not sure what they want to do job-wise is to look for those glimmers, those things that light them up. And so I took my own advice. It was like, wow, that was really fun. Now, just because I had fun doesn't mean I'm going to go become an artist, right? When you look for the glimmers or the things that light you up, it's not a one for one. It's, hey, pay attention. And maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's telling you need something in your life. So I took that soggy piece of paper home. I actually hung it on the refrigerator, and my husband and son are like, what's this mess? It looked like one of those blotch psychology things I've got hanging there. But I started playing with just the art supplies we had at home still. We had some crayons left over and things. And I just, for a few minutes, doodle, if you will, or scribble on a page, did a little collage. And I just kept doing it because it was fun. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to improve myself in some way. And then, so I'd been playing with it for a year or two, and then the pandemic hit and everything went crazy. I had some very elderly people in my life, people I was really worried about. Work with what I was doing was 24/7, right? And you've got all your own fears. It was just a really uncharted time. And I took to the art journal really to help me through it because it was all I had. And what I noticed, and I got curious about it, is it was capturing all the messiness, all the messy emotions. It was giving me a creative outlet. It was helping me work through anger, fear, like this crazy cycle of anger and fear. And I kept thinking, oh, I won't be angry tomorrow, but I was angry the next day. And instead of, it was the situation with work and policies and all the different things and home. And it really helped me to start getting some clarity about where it was coming from. And I also recognized that I was going to need to do something different with my life. It wasn't going to be immediate, but although I'd planned on staying many more years at this job because I loved the company and loved the people and financially it made sense, as I art journaled, I recognized, no, I'm not the same, right? I need to explore. And so I made that leap a few years ago. And the more I then started doing life coaching and coaching for people in transitions, not just executive coaching, I had them art journaling. So something that was really just for me, quite honestly. And, I have all these other skills and tools to help people. I recognized is really valuable for everyone. It wasn't unique with me to play with color and emotion. And once again, it's not about creating art that I'm going to show anyone. It's about a little safe place to get out of that left side of our brain that's really analytical and into that right side, which is more creative, more holistic. So that's really how it all began.
Once again, you're watching and listening to us on Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Susan Hensley. Go to her website, susan-hensley.com. I also want to mention the title of the book that you're author of is Art for Your Sanity. And you wrote that as a source to provide guides to use art as journaling to help discover, or rediscover joy, clarity, and also being resilient. And speaking of being resilient, the pandemic was something that it wasn't an easy task. We got blindsided, and I'm glad you mentioned the time where you were experiencing peace, joy, happiness. Give it 5 more minutes and something's going to come up in life and it's going to introduce you to the reality of life is not perfect. When you look at the messaging of the book that you author, Art for Your Sanity, what's some things that you put in there to help people kind of rediscover that clarity and resilience?
So thank you. It's a great question. It really starts first with encouraging people to take just a few minutes and play, to sort of silence that inner critic and do something creative. I'm using art. You could do it with singing, instruments, nature, but it starts with just allowing a little bit of time for play. As adults, that's one of the first things to go. Or if we play, it's for a purpose, right? It's to get better at a sport or to beat someone in a game, right? It's not usually as an adult for the sake of it. So I really try and reintroduce to people reading it a few minutes a day. I mean, I'm not talking more than 10 minutes of just play for the sake of it and just silencing that inner critic. Then we build from there in the book about how does it feel? What are you noticing when you do this? Like, what is starting to come up? And you're just paying a little more attention. It's a way to drop into some presence. A lot of people, I enjoy meditation. I think it's a really great practice, but so many people say, I can't still my mind, or it doesn't work for me. What I love about art is it gives that sort of side of your mind that's more intuitive something to do, right? It's a way to start to get more grounded and centered. So it's a really great tool for people who are, if you will, sort of fidgety or wanting to ground themselves, but the actual act of like sitting still or meditating sends them the other direction. I find it really, really helpful. So in the book, we go through starting as a place for play, then getting really curious about what's coming up? Why are you enjoying, whether it's collage or paint or these images? How did you feel when you were doing it? And then it's starting to recognize some patterns over time. And I believe it's really a source of tapping into your inner wisdom. Like, what's it telling you? Maybe take that chance or create a new space, pursue something that's intriguing you. It's really interesting when we stop trying to always analyze and think our way out, right? And just sort of see what comes up when we're doing something creative. I really find it as a way to create a dialogue, if you will, with your inner self.
When you look at how people who may not be creative, they're not in arts, creative processing, trying to be a painter or anything like that, how does your book kind of break that down for them to say, hey, you may not be artistic, but you can still use this art journaling as a tool to explore what you haven't explored yet?
Yeah. So I actually think art journaling in many ways works best for people who don't believe they're artistic. Because I think if you're already identified as artistic, you're probably already playing on the side. So for me, who I was at the time, right, very type A, very achievement, success focused, it was perfect because it was an outlet. I asked people to go back to what it was like in like maybe kindergarten, first grade. And what did they love to draw? There's usually always, some little art thing that you're doing, whether you're making a handprint or somewhere, and everyone seems to have an image, like rather they love to draw a tree, a car, a flower, some people do shapes. And one of the opening exercises is just to think about what that image was. Like I saw you smile when I was suggesting, everyone comes up with sort of an image when I say that. And so it's tapping more into that inner artist at that age when you were just, like I said, drawing or playing for the sake of it, And once you tap into that really helps silence the inner critic. And once again, it's not about producing art. It's sort of rediscovering what you enjoyed with art at that age. I mean, some people love the smell of like the glue. And so collage would be really fun, right? It's, the researchers show that we get a lot of messages by about age 8 or 9, like second, third grade, for those of us who aren't maybe going to make it professionally in the arts, that maybe we're not as creative. And so I find art journaling works really well for those of us who haven't tried to do any of it professionally, because one, we have a much lower expectation of ourselves. And I try and get folks to start with like crayons, because as an adult, you don't take yourself seriously when you're holding a crayon. I've yet to meet an adult, and I've been doing this for a few years, they've got, a red and a green crayon in their hand is acting like, I'm going to do something great here. Using really inexpensive art materials, whether it's like glue sticks or crayons or finger paint, really help keep it playful and curious versus starting to act like you are needing to perform for someone else. It's all about you being a little playful and a little curious.
I like how you said that, because first point is, when you are in that situation with those kind of tools, you're kind of put in position of being humble and say, you know what, I'm not about to paint the famous painting of whatever you want to see in the museum. I'm going to paint on the creativity of what I have in the moment. And going back further, when you mentioned about kindergarten in those days, the reason why I smile is because I remember when I was young and we had art class and we had a chance to like draw parents or something like that. And I remember vividly when I gave a drawing to my parents back in the day, they smiled, even though me getting older and looking back, it's like, whoa, you smile at that. And it wasn't about my ability in kindergarten to have a masterpiece. It was the thought behind it. And that's why it was a great memory for my parents and also for me. I could laugh a little bit, but too, it was the heart behind it. And I think that's a great point to illustrate.
I love that you shared that story, because one of the things I ask in the book is that as you're doing this, you become your own proud parent. Like, you immediately had that memory. I saw you smile. You've shared the story. And what's so fun about art journaling is you do that for you, right? You're sort of looking at that 5-year-old and you're saying, that was fun. I created for 5 minutes. You're not saying that was a masterpiece. It's not going to the museum. It's like, you can really sort of make friends with yourself. I talk a lot in my coaching practice about the voices, our inner critic, and how to really make friends with that voice and be much more supportive of yourself versus sort of always beating yourself up. And that proud parent that you did such a great job of describing, and smile. Now, I ask people through the work I do and through the book to recreate. In the story where I told you about that mess I made, I hung it on my refrigerator. What was I doing? I was acting, although, my husband and son may have been like, yeah, it's a little odd, but I loved it. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that story, because that illustrated my point perfectly.
And when you think about mindfulness, we always hear that as a hot keyword in shows, but it's important to discuss. How does mindfulness, in your opinion, play a role in the whole process of art journaling?
Yeah. What I love about it is when you're art journaling and you are just in the moment and you've sort of asked that inner critic and, you've said, maybe I'm going to do this 5 minutes, maybe 10. What's nice about it is to be in the moment. I suggest people take a couple deep breaths and just think about the colors. Why are you choosing whatever color, blue or green? Is it because you feel sad? Is it because you feel tranquil? That's all a form of mindfulness. It's being perfectly in that moment of creativity and creation. And that's where, mindfulness is about being present. And when we're using color or doing something creative, I find it really helps people to be more present and more aware. And then I ask people to step back and notice how they feel afterwards. Many times people feel more centered, more relaxed, more energized, right? So it's a way to be mindful while actually doing something, but it's not something like from a to-do list. It's not improvement. It's through play and creativity.
And with your experience, first, you listen on Refocused Radio, watching us online, talking to our guest today, Susan Hensley. When you have been able to not just introduce people to art journaling and also your book, say someone's just very critical in their process, like, I'm not an artist, I don't know why I'm doing this. What's some of the things or ways you've been able to encourage people to quiet the inner critic that's probably in the way of the process of the journaling process? You can say that 10,000 times fast.
It's a tricky one. It's a tongue twister for sure. If the person's curious, my suggestion is to pull up their favorite song on their phone, go alone, take 2 crayons, piece of paper, put on that song. And during the course of that song, most people's favorite songs are like 3 to 4 minutes, right? So I'm not asking them for, some big ballad. But while they've got that song on, to just fill that piece of paper with color. 3 to 4 minutes, you're listening to your song, and all you're being asked to do is fill it. You can scribble, you can draw, but fill it. I have found even the biggest skeptics, when they do that exercise, one, they recognize it wasn't scary. There's no failure point. I mean, that's like a no failure. The music also really helps move you to a different place. And then what I've had people tell me that they really enjoyed, particularly someone with the mindset that you were describing, they tend to be a person who's looking for rules and instructions. And what I get told every time is it was so freeing because it was a safe container, right? Just 3 to 4 minutes, 2 colors. You're just filling like an 8x10 piece of paper, right? You're not filling a big piece of paper. It could be half of that. But within that, it was free. Like you could swirl, you could do whatever. And that really silences that inner critic. The other thing I'll talk to people about who say I can never silence it is I'll say, can you ask the inner critic to just stay to the side? Like where you actually, instead of saying go away, and I found this aspect of people is very helpful. It's like, I see you and I appreciate all the things you help me do. Because a lot of people may feel like their inner critic keeps them disciplined or keeps them at the top of their game. It depends. People have different relationships. But your inner critic, if you believe that's what it's doing for you, you can say, I appreciate what you do for me, but for these 3 to 4 minutes, right? I'm safe. This is what I'm doing. And that can be really effective because you're not making the inner critic bad. You're not saying you don't serve a purpose in my life because, we all have different relationships. You're just saying for these next 3 to 4 minutes, can you be over here? Because I've got this. I want to do a little play. And I found that to be really helpful.
Once again, you can go to Susan's website, susan-hensley.com. We're talking about art journaling. Also, she's an author, transformational coach, and speaker. A couple more questions for you. When you look at the blends of creativity and emotional healing, how can this also be a spark in someone who is trying to find a way from a major transition in life that may include some kind of emotional healing as well?
It's absolutely terrific for that, right? For years and years, therapists and psychologists have used art therapy to help people transition things. With children, we see when children don't have words, and I think as adults, we think we always have the words, but we don't. Art is so helpful because there's all these layers we're experiencing. Earlier in our interview, I talked about this cycle I was in of like anxiety and anger. And what I recognized working through it, because you're just color on a page, express yourself. So it's very safe. It can help you get what's under that, right? Loss of control, loss of certainty, and start to, if not get comfortable with it, recognize it. There was a point where I was thinking, gosh, I am such an angry person. I was starting to label myself like, where is all this rage coming from? And it helps draw these little screaming faces. You can also become friends with really big emotions through your own sort of childlike drawing. So it can be art journaling can be so therapeutic in coming to understand, to express, because then it's just a page. You turn the journal or you can tear it up, throw it away. I mean, it's really whatever you want, but it's a safe way to process versus if you think of how sometimes people process difficult emotions. It can be outbursts. It can be numbing behaviors, whether it's drinking or overeating or, any of those behaviors. This is a really safe container that's productive and doesn't hurt other relationships, but it's a way to sort of touch into those feelings that can be quite overwhelming.
And also early in the show, we mentioned that you're an experienced HR executive. So if corporate, if they listen to this episode, what ways that corporate America can maybe introduce this as a tool for their employees to relieve some of the pressures that they feel they are experiencing?
So it can be used a few different ways. It can be used in a wellness program. I have actually spoken at a corporate retreat. It was a strategy setting one, and it was about, there's so much in corporate America about innovation, right? We need to innovate. Well, if you think of it, you're not innovating from the left side of your brain. You're not like sitting down saying, today I'm innovating, right? You have to have ways to really expand your thinking. And that's where doing something creative, something that you're willing to do for the sake of doing it because it's fun and being curious about it is so important. I always joke with people that most people I meet, if I say, have you ever had a great idea come to you in the shower? Everyone I know seems to be like, yeah, or have you ever solved a problem? And it's because you're not thinking about it. You're not grinding in that circle. You have left your super analytical left brain and moved into that right brain. And that's what playing with art. So in a work setting, right, people can do it individually. You could do it as a group before a brainstorm, just where you are freeing people up to be curious about what comes up in the process. So I think it's more relevant than ever with the push toward additional innovation, particularly with all the AI that's coming in to do really routine tasks. So I think our ability as humans to be creative and find connections is, our superpower still.
Once again, listening and watching us on Refocused Radio and talking to our guest, Susan Hensley. Go to her website, susan-hensley.com. Been talking about art journaling. And before we run out of time, it's funny you mention AI because I can never do a show without mentioning the word or just mentioning that thought of AI because it's never going away. If anything, it's going to be something that we use forever. I mean, they already starting to get it incorporated with phones and emails, everything. Whatever you touch, and AI is like a now personal assistant. It's an option. Even on X, Twitter, they have Gork or whatever that thing is called. So it's something that's never going away. But like you said, the human touch is always going to be the profound thing that connects people. And I feel like if we use that with AI, then we can be more responsible and not just relying too heavily on technology. Technology, my humble opinion, should enhance, not replace, but that's another show. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for being on the show with us. But before we take off, if someone wants to learn more about your services for your coaching or booking for a speaker, how can they best way keep in touch?
Best way is the website, which you've given. It's just susan-hensley.com. There's contact me. I get all those and I'll answer any of them.
Well, like I always want to say to our listeners, make sure you get her book, Art Journaling, on her website. And I want to say, like always, thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's been terrific.